Top 10 takeaways starting on time, right on time, 1 o'clock. We're off and running. Here we go. Because I'm ready to talk about the action I saw on Thursday, on Sunday, 2 more games tonight. I'm excited. Football is violent. I mean, it is violent. I was watching it again with my daughter. She loves it. She loves to play soccer and watch the NFL. Those are her 2 sports passions. And boy, oh boy, is it violent. It's so violent that I'm starting to wonder if it's a good idea for her to watch it. This is the point that I'm at. David Montgomery was twisted 360 degrees. I think it's a quad injury. I didn't know if it was a foot, an ankle, a calf, a knee, a quad, a hamstring, a hip. I actually thought it was his hip or his back. His whole body was corkscrewed 360 degrees. Any given ligament, muscle, tendon could have popped on David Montgomery. I felt so bad for him because he was rolling. The idea that Jahmyr Gibbs would outproduce David Montgomery was always fiction. David Montgomery's in his prime. David Montgomery's been a bell cow workhorse back his entire career, goes to Detroit as an upgrade over Jamal Williams. Why was there any doubt that he would be their workhorse? And now, of course, the injury, right? Same thing with Saquon Barkley, rolling and then injured, right? I mean, I saw him on the sideline slamming his helmet down. It was not good. Then they come out, it's like, oh, well, maybe he's avoided a high ankle sprain. It's probably a low ankle sprain. Even though clearly Saquon Barkley felt something pop, felt something grind inside his ankle. It's not good. It's a high ankle sprain. That's not a low ankle sprain that you just shake off. Most likely it's a high ankle sprain, and they're just going to whatever beat reporter will carry the water and issue the propaganda for the teams. But a spoiler alert, Saquon Barkley's going to miss a couple weeks based on what I saw. David Montgomery's going to miss a couple weeks. And I'm surprised more quarterbacks weren't injured. I mean, it's wide receivers going out of the game, coming back. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. He's still productive. Amon-Ra was not 100%, and yet still incredibly productive. So that was just a great testament to the toughness of Amon-Ra St. Brown and all of these NFL players. I mean, it's just crazy to me. All offensive linemen going down. Every time you look up, there's I saw a guy get his helmet and his right arm was caught under his body. I think it was with the Patriots. It was their second corner. His face hit the turf and his arm was caught under his body when he was trying to make a tackle. And it's like, oh, what was that? Was it a broken arm? Was it a dislocated elbow? Was it a dislocated shoulder? It could have been so many different things. These are so violent, and you're left not having any idea what the hell happened and what you saw, but things were twisted and broken and snapped on all these plays. And I'm just like, geez, this is crazy. This is gladiator spectacle. I've been calling the NFL a gladiator spectacle for many, many, many years. And the biggest reason why was the concussions, right? But now a lot of these players have these enlarged helmets, and they've really done a great job of creating new rules and enforcing those rules, most importantly, to prevent the helmet-to-helmet hits that were causing so many of the concussions. But that you still saw guys, whack their, Anthony Richardson whacking the back of his helmet on the turf as he's scoring a touchdown. I mean, he was going to go nuclear. Anthony Richardson was going to go nuclear. He had 2 rushing touchdowns early in the first half. I mean, this was going to be a huge week for him. Gardner Minshew comes in, does just enough, wins the game. Great. Good for you. But Anthony Richardson, he was going to be so good. And then you have some of these lines Like CJ Stroud putting up well over 300 yards with the fakest stat lines. Just some real fake stat lines out there where we'll talk about as we go through the takeaways. I have exactly 10 takeaways. These are the headlines. We have the headlines. The headline is NFL is very violent, incredibly violent, and the players that are feeling the brunt of this violence the most are linebackers, defensive backs, offensive linemen, and running backs. Getting completely brutalized. And it's jarring to watch. It is gladiator spectacle. And it's a shame. It's a shame that these things have to happen. But the running backs are more fragile because they're in a lot more of these violent twisting collisions than their wide receiver counterparts, which was part of the reason for zero RB. If you went zero RB and you lost David Montgomery, that's a lot less devastating than if you lost Saquon Barkley. If you lost Saquon Barkley, you lost Saquon Barkley in lieu of an Amon-Ra St. Brown, in lieu of an elite receiver, as opposed to David Montgomery. Well, the receivers that were available at that point were nothing like the receivers available in the late first, early second round. So that's, again, we're seeing more and more of the case for zero RB here as so many of these running backs go out. Austin Eckler didn't even play. I mean, you can go down the board. It's like, okay, right? Jahmyr Gibbs getting bailed out by a David Montgomery injury. Who's going to be the running back in New York? Who even cares at this point? It's just, whoa, right? What's going to happen? I don't know. Some of these running backs they just keep on ticking, right? The Terminator, James Conner, right? He just keeps churning. The NFC's on a roll, right? I thought the Giants were going to go 0-2. They make the comeback. But the NFC is on a roll. Tampa, 2-0. Washington, 2-0. Okay? Only the Ravens and Dolphins are 2-0 in the AFC. That's it. All these teams, Chiefs, nope. Bills, nope. They already have losses. The Chargers are already 0-2. Denver's 0-2. The Jaguars look terrible. Like this is the problem with the Jaguars, right? Trevor Lawrence is very much a Jekyll and Hyde quarterback, and they have a lot of great receivers. Their number one receiver, when they face weak slot corners, oftentimes is Christian Kirk, right? Christian Kirk. It wasn't Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley almost experienced a Mike Williams injury colliding with the goalpost stanchion. So that would have been tragic. Didn't happen, thankfully. My hope and prayer is, my sincere hope is that on the merits, Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley can have about equivalent fantasy output this year because they are about equivalent players. They're both betas, right? They've got 3 betas in their receiving core in Ridley and Kirk and Zay Jones, and they've got an incredibly athletic and dynamic tight end in Evan Ingram, and their quarterback is overrated. So in that particular scenario, it's going to be impossible for Calvin Ridley to put up alpha wide receiver numbers week in, week out. He had his biggest possible week with the best possible matchup against the Colts, and now we're seeing what is likely going to happen week in, week out. You're not going to know. You're just not going to know. Is it going to be Zay Jones this week? Is it going to be Kirk this week? Is it going to be Ridley this week? Is it going to be Evan Ingram this week? Is this the week that Travis Etienne is going to get 7 targets? You don't know. We'll see. But all those receivers are a lot closer than the ADPs suggested. Where this is clearly the Calvin Ridley passing game. No, it's not. They're all close. And so that was vindicating to see that. And the NFC was, the clear inferior conference to the AFC the last few years. Not anymore. Man, times are changing it's crazy. Like, The NFL is becoming more and more violent every week, and the teams that were good were bad. The teams that are bad were good. Wild stuff. Mike Evans, not dust, right? Buccaneers 2-0. Baker Mayfield, you feel great for him, right? Baker Mayfield was one of those late round quarterbacks in Superflex you needed to get. That was the firewall third quarterback for Superflex. I hope that you took my advice and you drafted Baker Mayfield every time in Superflex as your third quarterback. You're very happy now. Because why? What was the point? The whole point was he has weapons, right? He has tactical scrambling and weapons. And now we're seeing those weapons. Mike Evans is not dust. His yards per route run slipped under 2.0 last year. His target separation was 1.37, which was outside the top 90 wide receivers last year. This is why, as he's turning 30, I assumed Mike Evans was going to continue his decline, and yet no. Some of these receivers, they find a fountain of youth. I don't know how they do it, but they somehow at age 30, it can go either way. You can look up and a wide receiver is just a dust ball. Like he's nothing. He's gone, right? It's over, right? We saw this with rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas, right? He was very much in that Mike Evans archetype. By age 30, over, done. Calvin Johnson, retired, right? So this is the assumption. Oh, this decline's going to continue. Oh no! Mike Evans, a Hall of Famer, and sometimes Hall of Famers they claw back that extra year or two that you were doubting. Oh well, like Andre Johnson did this. Andre Johnson, not really a Hall of Famer. I know people want him to be a Hall of Famer. Not really a Hall of Famer. Let's be honest. But has that big athletic body type. And, at age 31, had that one last season with the Texans. Had that one last season. Then by age 32, completely over. So Mike Evans saying, hey, actually, I'm going to put up that one. This is one last job, right? These action movies like Heat, best example. Heat is a great movie. Please go watch it. It's amazing. I'm now at the point where I can start showing my daughter R-rated movies, and I'm like, okay, we got to watch this movie. And now it's a whole new world of movies has opened up. Shawshank Redemption, so many. Heat, right? One last job, one final job. So this is the one final job season for Mike Evans. I'm happy about it. I'm happy. I didn't draft a lot of Mike Evans because in those rounds, we're going running back. Right? That's the problem. I don't have a lot of Mike Evans because, more interested in Tyler Lockett, right? In that particular zone, even though Tyler Lockett's ADP got steamed up at the end of the summer. And then that's when we had to get your running backs, get your quarterback, get your tight end, get your Freiermuths, get your Evan Ingrams. Didn't end up with a lot of Mike Evans, sadly, but that's just a team build. Right, that's a function of the team build. We're talking to Billy on the Dominator show. He's like, I think we're going Mike Evans here. Mike Evans, he's undervalued. Look, who else are they going to throw the ball to? Right, and he's still Mike Evans. He's still, at the very least, he's still 6'5". They just throw it up to him. Target separation be damned. So Billy was right again. And I was right all along about Joshua Kelley. I've been right about Joshua Kelley at every step of the process. Where it's like, oh, Joshua Kelley's just good. And he loves the sport of football. And he's going to be there to pick up the pieces for Austin Eckler at some point. And then what happens? Week 1, he actually was super productive, has a touchdown, is a breather back plus. And everyone runs to their waiver wire. Everyone's picking up Joshua Kelley. Suddenly, Eckler's out. And they're raising their hand. We're on the starter stream with Jack Kavanaugh. So follow us on TikTok. We have 2 TikToks. You got to follow both TikToks. We have at PlayerProfiler and at Profiler NFL on TikTok. I was streaming from Profiler NFL. Jack Kavanaugh was on just the Player Profiler, and we joined streams. So Jack and I crossed streams on TikTok to give people start and sit advice. And the player that was asked about most frequently, there were 2 players asked about most frequently. Number 1, Joshua Kelley. Should I start Joshua Kelley over player X, player Y? And I was like, no, I love Joshua Kelley. I'm Joshua Kelley. My name's not even Matt anymore. It's Joshua. It's Joshua Kelley, not Matt Kelley. I don't even answer to Matt Kelley anymore. It's only Joshua. But I'm not starting him. Are you insane? They're going on the road to the Titans, the best front 7 in the league, right? We didn't know what would change heading into this year. That's why I was like, hey, we got to start Jamal Williams last week at home. We got to make the Titans prove that they're going to be the top front 7 and the most suffocating run defense in the league again. And then what happened? Oh, they did it. Remember, they did it? So now that they did it and they reestablished themselves as the best run-stuffing unit in the league, when a team goes on the road with a player with a good, not great, like I've never said Joshua Kelley's electric talent. He's just a good, solid football-playing running back, right? That guy's not a guy you start at Tennessee, ever. So if you started him over any kind of good play, do you want to start Joshua Kelley? I'd start or sit Joshua Kelley or Deebo Samuel. It's like, what? Dude, Deebo's playing the Rams? What? So a lot of people started Joshua Kelley inappropriately. So again, I'm right about Joshua Kelley every time. Is he worth stashing in Dynasty? Yes. Drop him? No. Start him this week? No. Right. Also, Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne was a total trap. Oh, double-digit targets in week 1. So many questions about start Kendrick Bourne. Really? And I was like, Jack, can we just remind people that the number 1 receiver, the primary option, the alpha in the passing game in New England, and this has been confirmed by all the beat reporters, by everybody, it's Hunter Henry. It's going to be Hunter Henry in the red zone. It's going to be Hunter Henry over the middle. It's going to be Hunter Henry on third down. It's Hunter Henry. And then it might be Bourne. It might be Parker. I asked Jack, I said, did Devontae Parker die? Did he die, Jack? Is he dead? I hope he's not dead, because these starter stream questions make me think that he's dead. He's not. What are we doing here? He's a replacement level cardboard cutout wide receiver. Joshua Kelley is a relatively better running back vis-a-vis the other players that play that position in that sport. Joshua Kelley's a better running back than Kendrick Bourne is a receiver. So no, you're not starting Kendrick Bourne over almost anybody. What? And then sure enough, nothing. Right? Just airball on Kendrick Bourne. It was weird. So I think this is the shiny toy syndrome. It's the shiny waiver wire toy syndrome that we see every year in fantasy football, where it's like, I just got this guy, okay? I'm excited to have a new thing, and I want to try the new thing. I want to drive the new car off the lot. I want to play this thing. I want to drive down the road in this thing. I want to see what it can do. I want to start him. Okay, go ahead. Maybe wait a week. If you got Kendrick Bourne, I sure as hell hope you didn't bid up on him. And we'll get into this in a little bit. Strategy, right? Week in, week out strategy to manage your fantasy team. Seasonal leagues, Dynasty, paying up for wide receiver, not a good idea. Maybe you got him inexpensively, but you should have started a guy like Justice Hill. Like, there was a start-sit question. Justice Hill or Kendrick Bourne. It's like, Justice Hill. Now, did Justice Hill put up big numbers? No. But process-wise, it was the right move. A takeaway number 9, is that Justice Hill is the primary back in Baltimore. The touch distribution was 14-10, and he played 11 more snaps than Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is a between-the-tackles grinder. He comes in to sit on a lead. That's why he got carries in the second half. He was out there salting the game away. Justice Hill is the guy that's out there when they need production, when they want to keep the defense guessing, when they don't want to telegraph what they're doing. You put Gus Edwards out there so you can say, hey, defense, we're about to run the ball. Try to stop us. So Justice Hill is the RB1. And maybe you could do a trade. If you're doing a trade and someone has Justice Hill, see if you can get him. Dynasty especially, see if you can get him. Just as a throw-in. I would try to acquire Justice Hill as a throw-in. But I don't want to bury the lead on running backs. We talked about who was I drafting in round 7. Right? Tyler Lockett and Rachaad White. Rachaad White. Over 20 fantasy points. He looks like a league winner. And another rule, another boring rule, as I become very boring and, wishing I had drafted more Mike Evans and, preferring a David Montgomery over a Jahmyr Gibbs. 5 years ago, that would have not me. Not me. I would have been all about Gibbs. Now injuries are happening. It doesn't matter, but process, Montgomery was the move. And when a Chase Edmonds goes down, and he's going to miss weeks, it's just worth reminding everyone in the world who plays fantasy football that yes, there's an incremental benefit to Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker, who had 7 yards on 8 carries and 0 targets. 0 for the undrafted Sean Tucker, who has some explosiveness, and he's a fun, dynamic player, just like Justice Hill. But Justice Hill, for years, did nothing. Nothing. And he was drafted like early day 3. Nothing for years. Just had to work hard and work his way up. That's going to be Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker is now in the league, and he's going to be in the league for years. And he's going to keep grinding, and eventually he'll get his opportunity. But it's not going to be anytime soon. He's not a refined running back. He's not ready to be any kind of primary back. What? No. Rachaad White is that guy. Chase Edmonds going down means more targets, more third down work for Rachaad White. You can't bury the lead. When an injury like this Chase Edmonds injury happens, this is not an occasion to go out and be like, oh, we got to get Sean Tucker. No. You got to trade for Rachaad White. You just celebrate Rachaad. That's the move. Just expect more from Rachaad White. Play more Rachaad White in DFS. That's what you do. Rachaad White wants to be a football player. That's one of the great joys that I have watching players like Rachaad White. I know how much he wants it, how much he loves it, and then to have success, it's just so special to see that. Cam Akers isn't that guy. Cam Akers is an asshole. Cam Akers doesn't want to be there for whatever reason, right? We're now 2 years into this Cam Akers melodrama in Los Angeles, where you never know whether he's going to be a game day inactive. You never know whether he's going to come off the bench for 1 or 2 touches. You never know. Did he wake up on the right side or the wrong side of the bed today? I don't know. But that's not a player I want. And we're going to continue to work as hard as possible to diagnose the players that want to be football players and don't want to be football players. We're doing a better job of it. Yeah, we had Cody with the dog rating. We're going to continue to put effort and research resources behind this to try to figure out whether these players have that passion. The passion factor is huge. Cam Akers doesn't want to be there. If he doesn't want to play football, you shouldn't have him in Dynasty. You shouldn't be drafting him. Get out of here. I just couldn't do it. The reason I couldn't do it with Cam Akers, admittedly, wasn't drafting him. Rachaad White made that decision easy, but it was the Rams. That this could be one of the worst teams in the league, one of the worst offensive lines, one of the worst defenses, and yet they weren't. The Rams are a lot better than I expected, and we'll talk about one particular Ram that I don't really want to talk about, but I have to talk about, everyone's asking about. I'd rather not even mention his name. I don't want to let those words tumble from my lips, but I will at some point later in the show. I don't want to do it, but I will. We'll get to it after this. Hey, we're all starting new fantasy leagues all the time. And more often than not, where do we start our fantasy leagues at Player Profiler? On Sleeper. Because it's the best. You can imagine my excitement when I saw Sleeper rolled out. Sleeper picks, baby. Now, you know I love Kenny Pickett, right? Week 1, who does he face? San Francisco. That's a bummer. So I'm going to be going less than on Kenny Pickett's projected yardage and on whichever quarterback is starting for San Francisco in Week 1. Probably not Trey Lance. But then, who do the Steelers face in Week 2? The Browns, right? We think the Browns are going to crank things up. So there, you can say, hey, Kenny Pickett, more than his projected passing yards. And you keep on correlating. Elijah Moore, more than. George Pickens, more than. And if you pick up to 8, that's how you 100x your payout on Sleeper. It's called the Hail Mary. So if you use promo code Underworld, you get a $100 instant deposit match. Check out Sleeper's terms and conditions for details. These Sleeper picks are live in over 25 states. Yeah, buddy. There's a lot at stake with that Sleeper promotion. If the Steelers go nuclear tonight, and I hope they do, they may not. The Browns' defense looked pretty suffocating in Week 1. So now I'm not hopeful. The Browns' defense better than I thought. If with this home game, they are at home, they are at Pittsburgh, so maybe Pickett to Pickens. If that hits tonight, well, this promotion will be evergreen. If it doesn't hit, next weekend I have to go and reshoot that promotion. I don't want to do that. I hope we don't have to. Please. I don't want to have to do it. There's some editing involved with those. It's not just I don't just shoot it in 2 seconds. I would just sit down, one shot, whatever it takes, 60 seconds. It's a wrap. No, it's work involved. I'd rather not. I'd rather not work if I don't have to. Please, Steelers, please. So, of all the players, we're talking about, Saquon Barkley, right? Name a running back. How about Christian McCaffrey, right? Christian McCaffrey. We have all these players. Like Saquon goes out with an injury, so that was unfortunate. Christian McCaffrey, how does he get there? He either gets there with receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns, or rushing yards. That's like the rare way that Christian McCaffrey gets there. He did this week, though. 21 fantasy points with rushing yards, and no one else logged a carry or a snap from the running back room, right? McCaffrey was it. That was all. Not a single touch for Elijah Mitchell or anyone else. And you might say, well, that was the most dominant, bell cow performance, right? He was by far and away the highest usage running back in any backfield. It's McCaffrey. It's got to be him, and no one's close. I saw Barkley go down. I saw him slam his helmet. Actually, no. There was another running back who was McCaffrey-esque in his usage. And his name is Zach Moss. Yes, and I have a T-shirt with a Zach Moss crying Jordan because I was right about Zach Moss for many, many years, that he's just a guy. And yet, even if you're just a guy, even if you run a 4.7, if you find yourself in a backfield by yourself, right? If you find yourself alone in a field, do not fear, because you are in Elysium and you are already dead. Right? That's what happened. He's in heaven. Right? He's loving this. Kyron Williams, same thing. It's like you can run a 4.7. You can be a replacement level player And if you're all that's left standing, right, or all that's left standing with any kind of ball security whatsoever, because we know, Deion Jackson, that's his fatal flaw. Well, you're going to be out there, and you're going to be out there in Zach Moss's case. Forget this, 56 of 57 snaps, and he was 4 for 4 in the passing game, 4 for 4 on his targets. See, that's most important. You could be a between the tackles runner for a team with a rushing goal line Cam Newton style sneak it for the touchdown quarterback, and big deal, right? You're Gus Edwards. But if you're catching passes, that's the difference between a Zach Moss and a Gus Edwards is the 4 for 4, right? Because you're going to have these games with positive game script where sitting on a lead, salting it away, give the ball to Zach Moss over and over and over again, and that's fine. But how many times can you play the Texans, right? So, no, I'm not getting too far out over my skis with Zach Moss. I am with Michael Pittman, though. They crushed the Texans. They were up 28-10 at halftime. Michael Pittman still puts up 8 catches. Another 8-catch performance for Michael Pittman. It seems like 8 catches. Doesn't matter what the quarterback is. Doesn't matter what the game script is. Michael Pittman's going to give you your 8 catches. He's a true alpha, right? So we're going to continue to monitor who has a better season. Ridley, the fake alpha, or Michael Pittman, the true alpha. Now, their skill sets are similar. It's just that Michael Pittman's bigger and doesn't have nearly the same supporting cast competing for targets in Indianapolis. That's the difference. Context matters. Supporting cast matters. Target competition matters. Zach Moss is a player, especially when they're at home, that you're going to want to play. Now that he is a true bell cow, getting these dump-offs, and they will give him the ball sometimes in the green zone. Sometimes it's going to go to Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson doesn't play in week 3 with the concussion. I suspect he will not. If they do play Anthony Richardson, I hope he's already ruled out by the time this even airs. But if they do play him, Colts fans should protest. NFL fans should protest. We all walk out. I don't know where we walk in the street. I don't know. Do something, because that would be a tragedy. He's a newly minted young 20-year-old quarterback, right, in his early 20s, gets concussed, head slams against the turf. You're playing a long game here, right? And this is where there needs to be an intervention. So if there's a short-term thinking coach trying to play Anthony Richardson, there needs to be intervention from above, someone who's looking at the longer game. But my concern is it's not Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard, he could easily, if this season does not work out, be let go. But there could be a complete turnover on the front office and the coaching staff if the Colts flame out this year. They look like they're 1-1, and they crushed the Texans on the road, so they look like they're heading in the right direction. They had the best draft you could ever imagine. So Chris Ballard is one of the, again, has been restored. He and Howie Roseman have been restored on the Mount Rushmore of NFL GMs. But Howie Roseman was fired once upon a time. So stranger things have happened, and I just hope that incentive, that backward incentive structure, that short-term thinking for NFL coaches and general managers does not lead to Anthony Richardson and his health and his brain function being put at risk. Play Minshew. What's the harm? Play the long game, please. Minshew is good enough. He's fine. He's good enough. And if Minshew starts, which I think he will, hopefully rational thought processes win out, Zach Moss is a must play. What a world. What a world. Look at these players. Brian Robinson, bell cow. Brian Robinson looked like Antonio Gibson in the passing game. They had similar receiving yards on similar targets. And when I'm watching the game, I couldn't tell who was who. I'm like, how did Brian Robinson suddenly become Antonio Gibson level explosive? I don't understand how it happened, but it did. It did. Also, by the way, the Colts are playing the Ravens in week 3, so that's an auto loss anyway. You do not want Anthony Richardson playing in that game on the road at Baltimore. You know you're going to lose. Play the long game. Just put Minshew and Moss out there and let them absorb the collisions. That's why you have them. Man, NFL, what a brutal sport, right? It's like, that's their job, absorbing punishment. That's what I do. What do you do? What do you do for a living? I absorb punishment. Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert's not dead yet. He operated as the number 2. He ran more routes, more targets than Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup is dead. So Jalen Tolbert, not dead. Michael Gallup, dead. Michael Wilson also far from dead. Michael Wilson is happening. He is happening quietly, right? Roschon Johnson happening quietly. Two of the best performers at the Senior Bowl, chipping away, right? Chipping away. Roschon's yardage total similar to Herbert's this week. Don't be surprised when next week they just decide, okay, enough of this charade. This is the Roschon Johnson backfield. Michael Wilson, 3 for 3 for 56 yards. Super efficient. That's what he does. He looked the part. He looks like a Michael Pittman level alpha. Marvin Mims was technically the 5th receiver, but he still put up over 100 yards. And you're going to get people, and this is the crime of the century, when you have waiver wire claims put in on a player who you know you like, and he's going to start to earn more snaps, and he's going to be more productive as the season goes along, but he gives the game away on 16 snaps in week 2, and someone else bids him up, and you can't pick him up because of it. It's like, hey, man, could you chill with the long 50-yard bombs? You need multiple? Why? It would have been nice if he just was a little less productive this week, and then you could go pick him up and let him percolate on the bench. But now it's like, oh, God, now I have to overpay for a guy who's not really getting any snaps. So it's probably not going to be until week 6, week 7 that Marvin Mims is really unlocked, especially with Jerry Jeudy back. So you're put in a tough spot where you're probably not going to get him on the waiver wire. That's the theme, really. Lots of wide receivers you're not getting on the waiver wire. You are getting Michael Wilson, right? Michael Wilson's a guy you're getting because you can get him for nothing and stash him and see what happens. They're going to get a quarterback upgrade, right? It's not going to be Josh Dobbs the whole season. So it's exciting. It's exciting if you have Michael Wilson. It's less exciting if you have Marvin Mims because you're like, thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot. I know that Jeremy in my league is absolutely going to be going after Mims this week. And we're not here to bid up wide receivers on the waiver wire, even ones we love, like Marvin Mims, because it's going to be a few more weeks until he commands a substantial role in that offense. Only got 16 snaps last week, so it's just, damn it. Gave the game away. Zach Wilson gave the game away. He's still bad, really, really bad, horrific. And it's amusing to hear the coach speak. He's really gotten comfortable. The light really came on, right? Oh, it's been night and day. And then you look up and like he's still horrendous. Like it's one of the worst quarterbacks. Like, oh, man, he was available in my Dynasty league. I could have picked him up. Yeah, you could have picked him up and you didn't because he's bad. He's no good. Bad. Leave him on the waiver wire. But it's interesting who gets hurt, right? Who gets hurt by bad quarterback play? It's like, oh, the receivers. No, the number one receiver, even when quarterback play is bad, he's going to get targets. He's going to get the touchdown like Garrett Wilson did. He'll survive. But it's going to be the running backs that are starved out. This is what's counterintuitive about bad quarterback play. It's the running backs that suffer. Think about it. Look at Hall and Cook combined for 16 yards. Why? Negative game script, stack boxes, and very few red zone opportunities. That means inefficient running. That means stalled drives, fewer targets, and few red zone visits means fewer touchdowns. So you're not going to get the fantasy points. Right now, do I want Breece Hall in Dynasty? Yes. Eventually, it's going to turn around. But we're weeks away from the trough moment in the Breece Hall Dynasty value. I would wait a few more weeks before you start submitting those Breece Hall offers. But it's gonna get worse before it gets better for Breece Hall. It's gonna start getting better soon for Devon Achane. I think Devon Achane is gonna be happening. It's exciting. Now, Salvon Ahmed played plenty of snaps. You looked up, he was out there quite a bit. And now we learn, he's got ice on his groin, right? Ice on the groin. Iced groin's not good. So you see, Achane, he made it in the lineup, right? I saw him out there, some snaps. He's electric. Okay, he's explosive. This running game, this stretch zone scheme, with guys like Robert Hunt at guard, when you have great guard play in the stretch zone scheme, you're watching the Dolphins, and it's automatic that Mostert's going to get 3 yards. Like the 3 yards is the starting point. You can see the clear path, almost every run play for 3 yards. Then the question is, if he gets to the edge in time, 3 yards becomes 9 yards, or 3 yards becomes 12 yards. That's the stretch zone scheme, right? You're going to get your 3 yards, and then the question is it 3 or 12, right? 3 or 12. So in that context, Devon Achane is going to be exciting. And Raheem Mostert has one of the most robust injury track records, one of the highest fragility ratings on the Injury Finder app. I'll pull up the Injury Finder app right now, and he's way up there. So he's not going to finish. If they keep giving Raheem Mostert 15-plus carries every single game, he's not going to make it. Right? He will break down, and then it will be the Achane show. I think it's going to happen quickly, that they're going to ramp him up, and they're going to say, okay, here's a carry. Now here's 5 carries. Now here's 10 carries. So Devon Achane, 10 carries in week 4, very likely. And then if Raheem Mostert misses games like Montgomery and like Barkley and like Eckler and like all these running backs going down, I mean, wheels up, wheels completely up, where Achane could easily be the second most productive running back from this class at the end of the year. Because Jeff Wilson, that injury has really paved the way for Achane's relevancy. With a healthy Wilson and a healthy Mostert, it was always difficult to see how Achane fits in. But when you start the year with Wilson on the IR, and then they have to pile on the touches to Mostert, now you've really ratcheted up the probability that Mostert also goes down, and then the backfield becomes Achane's. And then it's like Bijan and then Achane in the pecking order. Now we know, okay, Montgomery misses a couple weeks. It's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs all over the place, laser light show, unless it's actually Craig Reynolds. So Craig Reynolds is an interesting pickup. We'll talk about Craig Reynolds more on the Waiver Wired show tomorrow, but throughout preseason and training camp, they assign roles to players, and those players practice those roles, and they get installed these packages. Just changing them out and saying, no, now you're David Montgomery. That's not how it works. So yes, it's certainly they're going to call a lot more plays for Gibbs now without Montgomery, but it's not like going to be, this guy's a bell cow now. I actually think there's there's a higher probability that at some point this season, Achane takes over as a bell cow, as a workhorse, as the guy getting the lion's share of the touches in the Dolphins' backfield. Probability's higher that happens than it happening for Gibbs, because Gibbs has been trained up to be a satellite back, and he's viewed as their satellite back. And there are lots of plays that are in the playbook with Jahmyr Gibbs playing wide receiver that to change that during the season and to retrain him, to reprogram Gibbs doesn't even seem possible. Maybe it could happen, but I think it's more likely that at some point we see Achane in something that more closely resembles a workhorse role. Takeaway number 2, we're almost to the end. Like we have, I haven't been ordering all of these, calling them out as we go, but we're close to 10 takeaways here. If you include the Mike Evans and the headlines of the NFL being the most violent sport maybe since the Romans, we're already at 10 takeaways. So I'm already over delivering. Takeaway number 2, or number 9, however you want to think about it. Denver misses Bradley Chubb. Can we just, this is obvious. You're watching the Dolphins, you're watching the Broncos, and you're like, oh man, how did they're spending all this money on Tyreek Hill and Teron Armstead? How the hell did the Dolphins end up with Chubb? To remind yourself, how does this happen? Now we see what Washington, 30-plus points. Who thought that was possible, right? Russell Wilson had 31 fantasy points, and they lost to the Commanders. He was also the team's leading rusher. But he didn't look good. He did not look good. He was pushing the ball out there. It was a lot of sort of desperation drives in the second half that fueled the Russell Wilson fantasy output. But you can't watch these games with Russell Wilson and think that, oh, this guy is their starter for the next few years. He's secure. Oh, it's going to be Peyton and Wilson for the foreseeable future. You don't get that impression. You watch these games, you do not get this impression. Again, 31 fantasy points, and yet you look up and you're like, well, I think Jarrett Stidham needs to be stashed. However many fantasy points Russell Wilson posted in week 2, the Broncos are 0-2. They lost to the Raiders and the Commanders. Without knowing anything about how Russell Wilson played, if you look up and you see, okay, Broncos lose to the Raiders and Commanders in superflex and 2 QB leagues, your move has to be rostering Jarrett Stidham. It has to be. No matter what. Even if you think he looked great. He didn't. But even if you think he did, you have to get Stidham. You just have to. Because this could go sideways, and then the blame is going to fall on Russell Wilson, then he's going to spiral, and the whole thing could just collapse. They haven't played the Chiefs yet. They haven't played the Chargers yet. This is gonna end badly. This is perhaps these were 2 of the most fluky outcomes, games of the year, even though there have been so many fluky games and outcomes. Zach Wilson beat the Bills, if you remember correctly. I just don't think that's true. I don't think that those games weren't that fluky. He didn't look good. And I know how the NFL works. We have seen this movie before. It doesn't end well. It ends with Russell Wilson not playing in December. That's how this movie ends. Maybe. Maybe. It's possible. right? Just like number one, we need to talk about Puka Nacua because, again, if I was like, hey, I know how this movie's going to end. Nobody knew how this movie was going to end. Not a single person could have possibly guessed how this movie would end. That we see the most historic start to a rookie campaign in history. Right? I mean, it's unbelievable. There was a wide receiver many, many years ago, before my time, or at least I was a very young man, young boy, toddler, infant, 8 pounds, 6 ounce, tiny baby Jesus. Haven't even spoken a word yet. His name was Earl Cooper. Earl Cooper thought, hey, I got this, man. Through 2 games, 19 catches. No one will top that. Not even Anquan Bolden. Anquan Bolden comes along, year 2000. Anquan Bolden's like, I'm not fast. Just like Puka Nacua. I run a 4.7 like Puka Nacua, and I'm going after Earl Cooper's record. Falls just, no, can't beat him. Puka's like, well, I'm going to actually go ahead. I'm going to crush his record. Like, what? 20 targets. What? And good for him. Puka Nacua was a great guy to talk to at the Senior Bowl. That one practice where he played really well. He was probably the second best receiver in that practice after Jaden Reed. I wish him all the best, and I hope that he has great success in the league. I mean, he's not athletic. He has Willie Snead level athleticism, and he's making it work. He's figuring out a way. So you could say he's Jarvis Landry, Keenan Allen, Anquan Bolden. Those are some of his comps. The problem is those comps were day 2 picks. And this guy was drafted in the 6th round. So there really aren't any comps for him. Because, if you're in my position and you're seeing a wide receiver with 5th percentile athleticism, he's below the standard threshold. Like, yes, it is true that athleticism matters less for wide receivers than it does for running backs. That is true, right? But the athleticism matters on the poles, right? On the edges, in the extremes. That's when the athleticism matters. So whether a guy has 20th percentile athleticism or 80th percentile athleticism, if he was drafted in the 2nd round, it's not that predictive of his performance moving forward, like, or someone else, right? That's drafted in the 2nd round. In that same draft class, you have a guy with 80th percentile athleticism and a guy with 20th percentile athleticism. It's not that predictive. But if a player has, say, 95th percentile athleticism, say a DK Metcalf level athleticism, or super speed like a Tyreek Hill or a Calvin Austin, then that improves their probability. John Brown is a great example. Improves their probability of success coming out of round 2, round 3, round 4. And if a guy has 5th percentile athleticism, that does hurt his ability to break out. It does. So where running back athleticism, the whole spectrum really matters, right? It's super predictive up and down the spectrum. Whereas with receivers, the athleticism markers are really on the poles, sub 20th percentile or above the 20th percentile. That's when you start paying attention to it. So for a guy to have the sub 20th percentile athleticism and then for the NFL to signal, no, we don't think he's any good, we're going to draft him in the 7th round, 6th round, that really stacks the deck against that player. The probabilities really shift against him because a Jarvis Landry going in the second round, the NFL is saying, hey, the guy went to LSU. He's really good at football. Keenan Allen, third round. He's exquisite at football. Had one of the highest dominator ratings we've ever seen. He's amazing. Puka Nacua doesn't have the greatest college production metrics. Did not go to an LSU or even a USC caliber program. BYU, there just wasn't a lot to go on. So if you weren't enamored with this guy to the point that you were drafting him in the third, fourth, fifth round of your rookie draft, you shouldn't feel bad about it, right? Process-wise, it was not a wise decision to burn a draft pick on a player with that profile in your rookie draft. We had one player that I was comfortable drafting, one wide receiver I was comfortable drafting in round 3, 4, and 5 in rookie drafts, and that was Michael Wilson, third-round pick with size and an impressive athletic profile and freshman production. So a lot of positive indicators on the Michael Wilson profile, including success at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he and Puka Nacua were very close in that one practice that they played together. That one day they both practiced. One guy was drafted in the third round, one guy was drafted in the sixth round. Right? So if you had to choose, one guy, it would have been Michael Wilson. And I still believe that in the course of their careers, Michael Wilson will end up having more production. Will end up with more fantasy points than Puka Nacua. It's really hard to see that now when a guy has 20 targets in week 2. It's hard to see that. But he will. Eventually, Michael Wilson, the target competition in Arizona, so much more than there is in Los Angeles, where Puka Nacua is in a role that's been designed for Cooper Kupp for heavy volume. And you might say, well, no, he was playing on the outside. Yeah, but Cooper Kupp also plays a lot of snaps on the outside. That's the role. The whole offense is designed to get that receiver the ball. And he's just in that position with very little competition for targets. This is why when these cases are made, oh, you got to be drafting Dalton Schultz or Tyler Higbee. I understand it, right? I'm here for it as a late round option, especially in best ball when you're drafting multiple tight ends. I'm here to draft Tyler Higbee, no problem. But it's just hard for me to get there, where I'm like, I'm looking at a Freiermuth, I'm looking at a Nevin Ingram, I'm looking at a Dallas Goedert, and I'm like, these guys have real upside at the position. Whereas I'm only drafting Higbee and Schultz because these are weak receiving cores. It's just a target conservation play. So time and time again, when you chase the target shares, irrespective of the player's abilities, you end up not getting the production that you envision because someone comes along. In Tyler Higbee's case, it was Puka Nacua. Someone better comes along and cannibalizes those targets that you had penciled in for Tyler Higbee, you had penciled in for Dalton Schultz, even though these players are not special. Their projections are fragile, more fragile than the projections for good players, because they can be cannibalized by any good player that comes along. Sometimes a good player can come along out of obscurity, out of the 6th round with no athleticism from BYU. That can happen. So it's the Puka Nacua phenomenon is also a Tyler Higbee cautionary tale. It's why the firewall was Ingram, Freiermuth, Goedert. And anyone that did not draft Puka Nacua in their rookie draft, don't feel bad about it. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. Time and time again, you follow the system that we've laid out, which is you've got to go running back in those rounds, time and time again, with very few exceptions like a Michael Wilson. You're going to come out ahead. Same thing in seasonal leagues. If you're going to be picking up players on the waiver wire, they should be running backs. If you're going to spend any money in your fab, it's going to be a running back. 80% of your fab budget needs to go to running backs. And if you want to spend 20% on Puka after week 1, go ahead. But you're going to get outbid by the guy spending 40%. You need to be okay with that. Because that system, year in, year out, pays dividends, provides, positive expected returns. That's what you need to learn to realize, and not beat yourself up, not regret, oh man, why didn't I, oh, look at Puka, oh my God, 20 targets, what was I thinking? I could have bid more. I could have put in my number one claim on him. Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, you're not an idiot. You're not an idiot. There's never been a better time for me to remind every fantasy gamer out there to trust the process, to trust a system of success that's been proven for year over year over year over year over year. Fuck, I wish I'd picked up Puka. Damn it! Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.